In today's video, I'm going to show you how to cut glass safely. If you're a beginner and you're struggling to cut glass, you may have bought a glass cutter from a hardware store and you're scoring the glass several times and it's breaking in awkward ways and you're also running the risk of cutting yourself. This is the video for you. I'm going to go through a step-by-step guide on all of the tools and equipment that you need in order to cut glass safely and accurately. And stay to the end of the video and I'll show you a special technique that professional glass artists use with a tape measure to cut accurate strips of glass, especially if you want to make your first stained glass window and you want to put borders all the way around the outside. You need to be able to cut it accurately. So I'll show you that technique as well. All that good stuff coming up right now. So safety first, let's have a look at a pair of gloves. You can buy lots of different types of gloves on the market. Ones with rubberized faces like this are really useful. They do protect your hands from getting small cuts, etc. in your fingers, which can be irritating. And if you are a beginner, I recommend that you do wear gloves. When you get more used to cutting glass, you tend not to use the gloves, but certainly to start with, you do. Using a pair of goggles as well to protect your eyes is going to be absolutely important, especially when you're starting out. You can get surprising little pieces of glass flying up all the time when you're cutting, so wearing a pair of goggles is going to be really helpful. So let's have a look at the range of glass cutters available here. There are quite a range. The standard pencil grip glass cutter like this is, as you would imagine, you're almost holding it like a pencil. This is by the company TOYO, and you can see inside this clear chamber is an oil reservoir. It's been designed to have oil in it. I wouldn't recommend necessarily that you put oil in here because it tends to bleed out the end and go all over your glass. There's a better way of using oil that I'll show you in a second. So you also have other makes such as this, the German company Silberschnitt. This is called the Silberschnitt 4000, and the chamber this time is a brass chamber, completely solid, but again you can open up the inside of the chamber and fill it with oil if you like, but again I wouldn't recommend you do that. So there are non-branded glass cutters available again from places like Amazon. This is a non-branded one. They're substantially cheaper than the Silberschnitt ones, but I tend to find that the Silberschnitt ones or the TOYO ones tend to be the best and the most long-lasting. As far as, again, Silberschnitt is concerned, you have a smaller version here, which is called the lead cutter, which has been designed specifically for those who are making stained glass windows and leaded glass windows. There's a little indentation in the brass end here in order for you to hold the glass cutter like this. And it's a really convenient and comfortable way, much smaller item in your hand to hold, and especially if you have smaller hands, using a glass cutter like this is going to be helpful. Another type of glass cutter is again by TOYO, and this one is designed to sit in the crook of your hand like this. It's called a custom grip, and it just allows you to hold the glass cutter like this, and it might be more convenient for you to work with it in this position. And finally, you have a very popular glass cutter, especially for beginners, the pistol grip. As you can imagine, it's being held like a pistol, and you hold it in the crook of your hand like this, and it allows you to move the glass cutter around in a variety of ways. Again, a hollow handle here to be filled with oil if you so desire. So these are the basic glass cutters. Again, I'll leave links below this video to the full range of glass cutters that you have available. Some of them will be more suitable to you than others. So as you can see here, the glass cutter has a small wheel, a tungsten carbide wheel that sits on the front of the glass cutter like this, which has a very slight wedge to it, a little peak, and it is drawn across the surface of the glass to create a weakness in the top surface of the glass. Now generally speaking, as I say, I tend not to put oil in the inside of the tube. I tend to use a reservoir of oil that I've made already in a little container such as this. So get a little bit of WD-40 or sewing machine oil, squirt it in a container with a little piece of sponge in there, and simply dip your glass cutter into the WD-40, and that is sufficient to give a good lubrication to the wheel, and that lasts for quite a period of time. As you can see here, it's not going to spill oil all over the place by simply doing that method. Moving on, you need a pair of grossing pliers. These are called grossing pliers. Basically, they're a spring-loaded plier, and they have two jaws. There's a flat end jaw and a curved jaw. In practice, what that means is when you come to cut a piece of glass, you will introduce the pliers like this, with the flat surface on top and the curved surface underneath. Holding the glass cutter at an angle is key to its success, and you have to experiment to get that correct angle. It's applying enough pressure just to get that scoring motion to work on the glass. Whether you're pushing the glass cutter away from you or pulling the glass cutter towards you, it works just as well in both directions. So let's give ourselves a little bit more of a challenge and work with some textured glass. This granite back ruby red glass is quite a textured glass, so it is more of a challenge to cut with because any glass cutter has to negotiate the ups and downs of the textured surface. Again, the glass cutter makes easy work of this. This particular opalescent yellow is much more textured. It's also a harder glass, and as you can hear by the sound, it's much more difficult to cut. But again, the Silberschnitt seems to work with this glass very easily. Breaking pliers, these are an interesting tool. They're sort of a rubberized end, and if you can look at the end here, you can see that they're slightly curved. This is a concave and this is a convex curve. It allows you to then break the glass by clamping down with the jaws onto the glass after you've run it with a score line to create cuts on the glass. It's a really useful piece of kit. Normally, if you were just cutting a straight edge, you would score the glass and you would take your standard breaking pliers, the curved edge underneath and the convex edge on top, and you would apply a little bit of pressure on either side of the cut. It would break really, really easily. No tapping, no encouraging the glass line along with tapping at the bottom end of a glass cutter, just squeeze. That's great, and these work absolutely fine for those type of shapes. Finally, you have these running pliers by Silberschnitt, again a German company, and they have this interesting arrangement on the end. These two plastic devices, this one rotates 360 degrees, and this end one here has a small nipple on the end. It's used to break glass, and it's a really useful device, especially if you're starting out cutting glass for the first time. Getting a pair of running pliers like this, or breaking pliers as they're sometimes called, are going to be really helpful. Let's do a couple examples for you. So let's just do a wavy line here. And we'll apply a score to it. Very satisfying glass sound. Now, the way I would normally do it is I would simply use the back end of a glass cutter and tap to encourage the line along and then break it by hand. I've been doing it for many years like that. It works for me because it's speedy, but it doesn't work for everyone, and a lot of people are very nervous about getting their hands involved in the glass lines, and they're nervous about how the glass is going to cut. I completely understand that. This helps to alleviate that problem. So you have your box pad on top and your circular pad underneath, and you have the box pad sitting at right angles to the direction of the line, and you center it just where the score line is, and you gently squeeze down and you'll hear the glass beginning to crack. There we go. So it started its process along the line, and we do go to the other side and we carry on. We encourage it at the other side. And there we have it, broken in two. Now that we've experimented with cutting glass for the first time, just freehand cutting and getting used to that motion and the weight of pressure that you need in order to cut the glass, let's now begin to cut glass in a more accurate way. And the first thing that we're going to learn today is how to cut strips of glass that are a specific width. Especially if you're going to make stained glass windows that have a border running around the outside, you'll need to be able to make cuts of glass that are a specific width. And in order to do that, you're going to need a tape measure and you're going to need an L-shaped cutting square. So start off with the cutting square along the base edge of the glass. You've got to make sure also that the base edge of the glass is perfectly straight. It can't have curves in it, because if it has got curves or bends in it, it's going to make this set square sit at strange angles. The set square itself has got a ridge on it, which is really handy because it locks into position on the bottom edge of the glass like this, and you can slide it along and you can determine the width of the glass. We're going to be cutting strips like this off of the glass. When it comes to cutting glass using a set square like this, you've got to allow for the width of the glass cutter head. If we look at this glass cutter head closely, the wheel is housed in a metal collar, and that metal collar has a certain thickness. So we've got to allow for that when we're cutting glass. So what I suggest you do is you take your tape measure and you measure the distance between the wheel, the tip of the wheel, and the edge of the metal collar that holds the wheel in place. And on this TOYO cutter, it is 2 millimeters. So when we put our glass cutter up against our straight edge like this, we know that we're losing 2 millimeters because of the thickness of the metal collar when we come to cut our line. So in order to get an accurate cut, we have to add 2 millimeters onto our measurement. For example, say I wanted to cut a 30 millimeter strip of glass along here. Rather than simply measuring to the edge of the glass at exactly 30 millimeters, I'm going to add 2 millimeters to that measurement at 32 millimeters to allow for the metal collar holding the wheel in place. And we'll measure it, and that measures exactly 30 millimeters. So the golden rule is whatever glass cutter you're working with, just check exactly how much you've got to add to allow for the glass cutter housing when you're making your cut. And remember, when you're cutting glass, always wear protective goggles, and if you are a beginner, I do suggest wearing gloves as well. If you've enjoyed today's video, leave a like and leave comments and suggestions for future videos, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.